Hello, friends. This is another in the series called Confessions of a Comic Book Junkie. And this video is going to focus on two comics set on a Thanksgiving Day in 1980. I distinctly remember, for some reason, that day, based off of the comics that I got. That's how often, my mind is able to link to different times in my life or different periods in my life so easily. They're kind of like my anchor. Thanksgiving Day 1980, I remember it was very snowy out, very cold. I was about 10 years old at that time, and they don't really have them around anymore, but one of the competitors to 7-Eleven stores is called White Hen Pantry. And there was one local to our house in lovely Burbank, Illinois. And something was needed for the Thanksgiving dinner. So we had to go. I went with my dad to the White Hen, drove through the snow to get there. And when you walked in the door, there was a big spinner rack full of comics because in 1980, there wasn't any such thing as the direct market. And comic book shops were kind of rare, at least around in my area. So the spinner rack at the local convenience store was the place to go to get new books. So I went there, and my dad said I could pick two, because I asked him if I could get a comic. He said, go ahead and get two. He was feeling generous. So I looked carefully through the spinner rack, and these are the two I picked. The first one, not quite as memorable. This was a title called Master of Kung Fu. He's actually something that I think they're making a movie finally, Master Kung Fu, or they were going to before COVID. I don't know if those plans are still a go or not. But this was a fairly popular series for Marvel. It lasted a good 10 years, I think, and it ran over 125 issues. So, for a comic title, it did pretty well. This is number 96. And just the dark blue colors of this cover just kind of struck me. This was back at a time where, the cover really helped sell the book. But I was a fan of this title anyway, and I didn't have this one, so that's why I picked it up. Funnily enough, I started with Captain America. I mentioned in in a different video how Captain America was the title that drew me into the comics world. I'll just try to show a few pages here of the interior of the comic. But it was actually the non-superhero titles that I was more of a fan of. And this was one of them, because Shang-Chi, the name of the character, he's the master of Kung Fu, didn't have any superpowers. He was just highly trained in martial arts. That was his thing. And this title became something of a spy book too later on in its life. There were several famous runs of this title, and the theme of it was very kind of James Bondian, but with martial arts added in. So I really liked it. And, he would often fight with different weapons too, not just hand to hand, which I always thought was cool. So when I saw this, I had to have it. And as you can see, comics were only 50 cents back at the end of 1980. So this one was pretty good. But the other comic that I picked was really kind of odd. It was really kind of an odd choice for me because A, I didn't really follow this title regularly, and it was a hero title. It wasn't, it was part of the Marvel hero universe. And I liked the cover, and it turned out to be a key issue. This is Daredevil number 168. This is the first appearance of Elektra, even though they kind of misspell the name on the cover there. Again, it was martial art themed. Elektra had these cool looking daggers, which was something that I was attracted to, made me buy the book. And it wasn't until later that this ended up being a key issue, being the first appearance of Elektra. This was also Frank Miller's debut as writer and artist of the series, I believe. And I was just talking about Frank Miller in the last video about Dark Knight. So, this is where it all started for him as the sole creator of the title. Now, in a couple of issues previous to this, Miller was just the artist. There was another person doing the writing. But with 168, he was given the writing and drawing duties. So he brought in a character that he created called Elektra. I'll show you. It actually turned out to be a pretty good story. Here was the last page, but it was full of history. It turns out that Elektra and Matt Murdock had known each other in college and become lovers, only to split apart. And it would be later in this series that we would find out how Elektra became trained in the martial arts as a ninja, and kind of how she turned evil, sad to say. So you had the Great Lost Love theme going, plus, Daredevil was a kind of straight arrow good guy, and Elektra was not good at all. Even for those of you who've seen the Daredevil show on Netflix, it comes pretty close to the comic version, I thought. I mean, you're never going to get a real copy. It's more of a modern update, but for the end of 1980, this was pretty heady stuff. And again, this was at a time when I wasn't really a comic book collector. This just got thrown in a pile in a corner in my bedroom. And a lot of times I would end up doing purges and I would throw stuff out. But for whatever reason, this was a survivor. Actually, both of these were survivors. And I kept them. These are the actual comics that I bought that day in 1980. So, pretty happy to have this. I have most of the Daredevil run that Miller did. I think I'm missing a couple of issues here and there, but just having this one here is pretty big, at least for me. So, it's nice coming across a key issue when you're just looking through the spinner rack trying to pick something to read. And that's happened a lot over the years as a comic collector for me. So, Daredevil 168. That was a big one, and that was a good Thanksgiving actually. But for whatever reason, it's just burned in my brain when I got these books. I don't know why. It just is. And I'm sure there'll be other stories like this to come in the future. Hope you find this sort of interesting. I'm going to try to do more series-themed videos, like showing the rest of what I have of the Daredevil series that Frank Miller did in the early 80s. There's a couple other ideas I have for series-type videos, just talking about them. We'll see how they pan out. But this was just going to be a quick little video, just showing a little time capsule of a 10-year-old kid buying comics at the spinner rack. Can't do that anymore. In fact, geez, comic shops, going to a comic shop itself is getting kind of tough because times are tough, man. I'm telling you. Because the last 10 years I collected comics, I did mail order, so I didn't even go to comic stores very often, unless it was to buy maybe supplies or something. But all of the new books I just got in the mail like once a month. So it is what it is. Times change. So, but yeah, that's going to be it for this time. Thank you all for watching. May not collect new comics anymore, but I'm still a comic book junkie. So I confess. Peace.